EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. We are officially one day out from the NFL draft. 24 hours plus 12. Do the math, everybody. 36 hours until the NFL draft kicks off. 1 day from today. That'll be tomorrow night. Thursday night is round 1. That kicks off at 8 p.m. Friday night is rounds 2 and round 3. That kicks off at 6 p.m. And then Saturday is 4 through 7. That kicks off at noon. So we'll have you covered here on JAKIB Sports through it all. Johnny Mac, how you doing on this Wednesday morning, brother, as we inch closer and get really close now to the NFL draft?
I'm doing well, trying to get here, man. Desperate to get here.
Yeah,
I want to stop the information, the flow of information, not the silly season, the this, the that. It never ends. So hopefully that people stop playing games and we can get to the actual meat of the matter, so to speak.
Yeah, we'll see what's coming up now. And the meat of the matter is going to come inevitably, Johnny Mac. So we will talk about all of that. I saw yesterday just a couple news, little bit of news in Eagle land. Jalen Hurts graced the cover of Men's Health magazine. John sent me that.
Disrespect.
I was cracking up with the Johnny Mac text yesterday. He's like, yeah, major disrespect. Another magazine cover for Jalen Hurts. So, but that was pretty cool. He talked about that. I think Jalen Hurts confirmed he's a married man. So congratulations to him. And then, John, I was also following up on the Bleeding Green Nation Top 30 visit tracker. And there was one name added that I don't believe we've referenced. And it's Kevin Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State. I don't know if that was a most recent report, but I saw that this morning or yesterday, and I'm like, I didn't remember him being on there. So that's the latest, too. Another safety that was the Eagles have brought in to visit. They're taking a safety somewhere in this draft, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, they've done a lot of work on the defensive backfield as a whole, and, they lost a lot of players, trading C.J. Gardner-Johnson, losing Isaiah Rodgers, Avonte Maddox, Darius Slay. That's a lot of players that played a lot of meaningful snaps. So you got to repopulate. That came from Tim McManus late in the process. Kevin Winston. I don't. It's one of he's a Penn State guy, so that might have been local. That might have been top 30. That doesn't really matter. But they've done the homework. And yeah, he's a big time player. He was a big time player. Penn State got hurt last year. Jalen Reed, who's another player that the Eagles took a look at, replaced him and did pretty well. Obviously, Penn State had a very good season last year, but they'll bring that up to Jeff Kerr because if they don't win, it's a unsuccessful season. But they were very good. He's a very good player. Probably second round pick, I'd say. Potentially. And again, I don't know if it'll last all the way to 64, but it's possible, it because of the injury that'll impact things to a certain extent. And, a lot, again, you hear it all the time. This guy's a first round pick. This guy, well, they can't all be first round picks. You can't have 57. So guys will start to fall down the board. And so when you put out your projection, people, there's no way he'll be there. Well, yeah, there is a way he'll be there. There's also probably a way he won't be there, depending on the prospect. And that's been one of the most difficult things about this draft because the wide range of ceiling versus floor for a number of players. Starting very early. Two of them, have been speculated a lot to the Eagles, and Walter Nolan being one of them. I mean, he might go number 9 overall.
Yeah.
And people got him dropping 32 to the Eagles. So a lot of wide ranges for players.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Johnny Mac. I saw some of the intel you put out yesterday on a guy like Nolan and Shamar Stewart. The ranges on some of these prospects is truly, I think, the best storyline of the draft, John. We talked about how this draft can be, sometimes it feels boring, but that, in my opinion, is the best. Like, where could Shedeur go? Top 10, he could go round 2. Shamar Stewart could go, all the ranges of the prospects is very interesting to me. So we will see how that shakes out. I did see some of your other tweets. The Jackson Dart hype does seem to be boosting in a big way. I saw the Connor Hughes tweet yesterday, as you've talked about here on the show. So a lot of different news coming in here, information gathering, John, as you if you will, before the NFL draft. But John, you did put out yesterday your Eagles only mock 1.0. We got to do it, Johnny Mac. We got to talk about to the people. We'll have Mike Gil coming up. We'll have Brandon Lee Goutton coming up. Let's do the Eagles only mock from John McMullen here on Birds 365.
Yeah, well, let's first understand it. No trades because it's a waste of time.
I'm
a curmudgeon, blah, blah, blah. So it's more about, it's more about putting the players in a potential position because Howie is going to make some trades. But I'm not going to sit here and he's going to trade with, the Tennessee Titans in the 4th round. It's nonsense. And anybody who tells you that kind of stuff is just, and it's fine if you're just trying to have fun. That's great. But I'm not bothering with trades. So it's just about players that could potentially be there. So I tried to break it down in the 1st round. If you're trading up, you're staying put, or you're trading back. And, the theme to me, gathering information leading up to the draft has been they're going to take a traits player. And by that, I mean, they're going to take a guy with a huge upside. So, texting around with people yesterday, there's like this thought process that if you're like 5 to 10, you want to get out potentially because 20 might be the same as 5 to 10.
Right.
And then there's the process of 20 to 50 is the same. So it's basically, or not the same, but very similar as far as grading standpoint. So that's why you have all these wide ranges of where people will land, and you'll see somebody in the top 10 and somebody at 32. Because that's what I've seen with both Walter Nolan and Shamar Stewart, who are two people the Eagles are very interested in because they have high traits. So the thought process is likely, well, we're getting a guy with we're getting a guy with a bigger upside. And that's generally teams that have confidence in their developmental systems and abilities have that feeling more than teams that don't, like
right.
Chicago. I'm picking on Chicago already. So that's, and the Eagles have, to the point, they have a lot of confidence. Some would say it's bordering on hubris to be able to turn people into something. So that's why you start talking about players like Stewart specifically, because his upside is insane, but he didn't produce at the college level. So there's a lot of people that will be scared off. So same thing. It starts with New Orleans at number 9 because they need defensive front help. Now, you also have a new head coach. It's always a thing with new head coaches because I've seen it with Jacksonville at 5 with Liam Cohen. A lot of people have Mason Graham going to Jacksonville. They're taking an offensive player. Might be Genty, might be Tyler Warren, might even be Ted McMillan, considering it's Jacksonville. Yeah, he's in the mix. They're taking an offensive player. In the case of Aaron Glenn, he wants a defensive player with the Jets. Now, they might have to hold the line because there's just not probably anybody who's going to help them there. And there's probably going to go Membu, Tyler Warren, somebody like that.
Yeah, right.
So in the case of Kellen Moore, I'm sure he wants an offensive player. I'm sure he does. But they have such needs on the defensive side of the ball. It's interesting political football. And a lot of people have speculated that they'll go edge rusher or even Walter Nolan. And Stewart's been brought up there at number 9. And you got people in Philadelphia saying, because I put Stewart as the 32nd overall pick to the Eagles. Oh, that'd be a shitty pick. He might go top 10. He might. It wouldn't shock me. And if he doesn't go 9, he might go 11. If he doesn't go 9 and 11, then he might go 32. Then he might start falling. But that's sort of the wild stuff you have in this draft. San Francisco is at 11. They want an edge rusher as well. So, again, it's favorite flavor. There's a bunch of good edge rushers. And even though you never, I don't want to overstate it and say you want to be at 32. But of all the years to be at 32, and again, you want to be at 32 from the Super Bowl. I think people understand that. I mean, from a draft standpoint, you obviously don't want to be behind everybody in the moment, is what I'm trying to say. Obviously, you want the Super Bowl. So I hope people understand what I'm trying to say there. But of all the years, this is the year that, you know what? It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Because you're going to get probably a chance to bet on one of these higher upside players that could end up being better than guys who are drafted 14 or 15.
Yeah, you got to have the right infrastructure for that, though, John. Like, are you telling me that the Eagles are one of the teams that potentially cares more about traits than they would about like the game tape because they feel like they have the right organization to develop the player as you need to?
I'm not saying they're very traits based. They've always been very traits based. But no, they don't ignore production.
I'm not saying ignore it. I just mean like a guy like Shamar Stewart is really a perfect example. He jumps off the page in traits, but not really.
Well, there's this stat that came out recently, relative athletic score. You know, we talk about it all the time,
right?
Kent Lee Platt, but with edge rushers specifically, if you're over 255 pounds and you get like a 9.85 relative athletic score, the history says you're going to be good. You're big and you're explosive.
How long have they been using that score?
Well, Kent Lee Platt, he came up with it, I don't know, 10 years ago, somewhere in that range. But he's used the data available to go way back.
Okay.
Like, since the beginning. That's the thing about data. You can use data
exactly
previously before somebody came up with it. So, they understand those types of things. They've always been at the forefront of analytics and that kind of stuff. But no, they don't ignore the film. You saw it in recent seasons when they shifted towards just taking successful college players from Alabama and Georgia. So it's always give and take. But I think in this year, and generally, by the way, most of those players end up being very good athletes. It's not like Devontae Smith's a bad athlete, or Nolan Smith is a phenomenal athlete. Jordan Davis, for his size, was historic. Jalen Carter, I mean, they're all great. It's not like they're taking, in other words, it's not like they're taking a plucky Georgia kid who was a 2-star recruit. That's not a great, they all happen to be great athletes as well, plus production. So, yeah, you prefer to have, well, he's a great athlete. He's got great traits. He's got everything to be a star player and the production, but can't always get that. It's easier to get that in the top 10, but so then you got to make a difficult decision. In the case of Stewart, he's got everything you need from an athletic standpoint. He brings some size that they don't have. And there's also a part of it which the Eagles will never admit, but there's certain guys that they trust more than other guys on the coaching staff. Stoutland would be obviously number one, but Jeremiah Washburn's high on that list as well. He's the edge rushing coach. So I think there's a lot of trust in him that he will get the most out of whomever. You kind of saw it last year, at least in splashes with Alex Hunt, very raw prospect, and everybody's excited about. So yeah, they do believe in their ability to develop players, and some teams are scared of that.
Yeah, no, I know. You want to run down your picks, Johnny Mac, on your Eagles only mock 1.0 that you put out? Your 1-0, your 1.0 and only Eagles mock here for the people on Birds 365.
Yeah, well, like I said before I went on my tangent, I did sort of go trade up, stay put, trade down. Trade up would be Walter Nolan. That's the guy. I mean, that's the most Eaglesy pick in the draft. I don't think ultimately he'll fall to a spot where they can go up and get him, but to me, he'd be the perfect pick. But I think it's very unlikely. If they're forced to stay at 32, I would say it would be Stewart or Malachi Starks, very high IQ player who could fit, day one as your starter opposite Reed Blankenship. Trade down, I think it's Femi Oladejo from UCLA. Same thing I talked about with trades based. I mean, they love that kid from everything I've gotten. And he's under there's a lot of teams in the NFL. The 49ers love him as well, I've heard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams.
I've seen him anywhere from round 1 to round 3, John.
That's what I'm saying. He's an underreported guy who might go number 1, who might go in the first round, not number 1. Might go in the first round that people go, "Oh, one of those whoa moments." That's a potential possibility. I think he's more well liked in the NFL than people realize. So ultimately, I landed on Stewart, but those are your possibilities, I think, in round 1. And if you don't get Walter Nolan, round 2, I went TJ Sanders, the South Carolina defensive tackle, sort of a poor man's Walter Nolan. A lot of day one hype with him early. He's kind of slowed, and I think he might get pushed down the board a little bit. And there's a guy who could help you right away.
Yeah.
And if you get him, I think that's tremendous value. Round 3, I went with Jacob Harris, the corner from Kansas State. Again, I talked about all the bodies they lost in free agency and on the trade market. They just need to repopulate the secondary.
Yeah, I agree.
And he's a guy who played outside of Kansas State, but he projects inside. So right off the bat, he could be a backup in the slot. He could be a backup outside.
And then in a perfect world, potentially, could that be your replacement and the slot if you did want to push Cooper to the outside? Is that how you
see exactly. Kaylee Ringo falls on his face if you're not confident. I think that's more about down the road, but not this year because Adoree Jackson's here as well. But round 4, I went Jalen Travis, the big Iowa State offensive tackle, because I do think you want the heir apparent to Lane Johnson, and he doesn't have to play right away. You can stick him, you can redshirt him, and he's just got everything Jeff Stoutland would want, but he does have to get a little bit stronger. So it works on both sides. You can spend a year in the weight room and start ramping up. And then round 5, they have those 4 picks. And I'm sure Howie's going to move around the board, and I'm just trying to put players in potential slots. And, one guy I've focused on a tight end, because I don't see how you're going to be able to get the tight end earlier, is Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, who's, to me, maybe the best blocking tight end in the draft. And he's a better receiver than people give him credit for. Not the most explosive receiver, but has very good hands. And I think he could be a starting player, tremendous value, and help the Eagles right away, too, because he can block. And, if they do draft him, he'll be the best blocking tight end they have the minute he steps into the complex. So I think that's a good value pick. Jaden Blue, the running back from Texas, we talked about, they had him in, really good if the Eagles ever go this direction. Really good out of the backfield, catching it.
Interesting thing about him is just not what I expected the Eagles to want at that position with Saquon.
Well, I mean, it's not about now. It's about the future.
Right. Yeah.
And he's a very explosive player, very fast. But really, he's got and again, longer term prospect project. not a very good pass protector. So if you're going to be a third down back, you got to pass protect. So that's number one. Jalen Smith, the DB from USC, just what I said. They got to repopulate the secondary. And he's another versatile player. He played safety before he moved to corner, projects the slot, so he can play a bunch of different positions. I think he's a good fit. And then Kobe King, they got to get a linebacker, the last pick from Penn State.
A lot of top 30 visits there, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, the Eagles have had a history of drafting guys they bring in. Now, a lot of times I always bring up Darius Guys. Sometimes you bring in a guy to rule them out. But I will say this. When you start talking about day 3 guys like Blue and King, you're not bringing them in to rule them out. Now maybe the visit went poorly. That's always possible. I think people don't think about it that way. You could have a bad day. And that's why I bring up Darius Guice back in the day, who got in a fight with somebody, depending on who you believe. Not a physical fight, but a verbal fight. And things can go in a negative direction. But it's all just an educated guess and speculation. So
good stuff. There it is, Johnny Mac. Johnny Mac's 1.0 Eagles only mock. Pretty good names, John. I like it. Shamar Stewart, you had first. Again, this is just a mock, everybody. Shamar Stewart first. You had TJ Sanders in the second round. Jacob Parrish, the cornerback from Kansas State, in round 3. Iowa State offensive tackle Jalen Travis. Notre Dame tight end Mitchell Evans. Texas running back Jaden Blue. USC defensive back Jalen Smith. And Penn State linebacker Kobe King. There is the Johnny Mac Eagles only mock draft. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, let's get to Mike Gil, who's going to join us now here on Birds 365. See what Mike has to say as we're one day out from the NFL draft. Joining us now is Mike Gil from 97.3 ESPN. Give him a follow at Mike Gil Show and go and subscribe to his YouTube channel at Mike Gil Show. Mike, how you doing on this Wednesday, brother? We are one day away from the NFL draft.
Finally. Right? Finally, we're getting this NFL draft. We're ready to go, man. I was on a show last night where they do a mock draft, and I was the picker for the Eagles. And somehow Walter Nolan was on the board for me. So I did my best version of Howie Roseman and sprinted to the board and took Walter Nolan. And the host of the show was laughing about how this always works out for the Eagles. Like, how could Walter Nolan possibly, you have 31 reporters and people who picked before me, and somehow this guy made it to the Eagles. And it's like, this is the story of the Eagles all the time. They get these teams that just let you take the player that you shouldn't be able to get.
Yeah, it's happened for a number of years. Happened with Jalen Carter. Happened with Nolan Smith.
Which is funny, John, because
Gene.
Which is funny because the guy texted me. He said, last year we had you on and you took Cooper DeJean. They ended up getting Cooper, but not where you thought in the second round. He's like, how did somebody let them get him? And the other pick, because it was a Vegas-based show, they were harping about how the Eagles got Jalen Carter and the Raiders didn't have him on the board. Right? They didn't have Jalen Carter. They took him off their draft board because of the off the field stuff. So
a lot of gutless teams out there, Mike. A lot of dumb teams. Yeah. So, I asked Jeremiah that on his conference call. I asked him, because there's a lot of hype. And I would say of all these goofy mock drafts, mine included, I'm not, there's more Walter Nolan to the Eagles than anybody else if you add them up. And I asked Jeremiah, I said, there's a lot of hype about Walter Nolan falling to the Eagles. And he was like, I don't see that.
Yeah.
But then he pivoted back and said exactly what you just said. He said, but I wouldn't have said, if you would have asked me that about Nolan Smith at 30, he would have said no chance. If you asked me Cooper DeJean at 40, he would have said no chance. Jalen Carter at 9 even. No chance. You would think somebody would have had the guts to take the best player in the draft before number 9. So, yeah, bad teams have let good players go to the Eagles. And it used to be that way with the Ravens. It used to be that way. It used to be a joke with the Steelers. People keep letting good players go to Pittsburgh. Now it's people keep letting good players get to Philadelphia. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I don't really even remember who else was on the board. They send me a list of all the people who have been picked already, and I'm looking through and I'm going up and down the text, and I'm like, did nobody take Walter Nolan in this pick? I just kept going up and down, so I don't even know who else was available around there. But I said,
well, you were right. If Walter Nolan's there, they're taking Walter Nolan, which
the conversation kind of spun off to. The take that Roseman likes to trade, he likes to move. Would they stay at 32? Is there a spot where Walter Nolan might fall? And to make sure they got him, they make the move up. I guess that would be a storyline that starts as he starts to fall. Where's that number where they say, we got to move up to go get him? We can't wait till 32 because this is the guy that we want. We're going to go to, is it 22, 23, 25? That would be the storyline, I guess, that would start to emerge on draft night.
Yeah, and I think they would go up and get him to a certain, level. Maybe you can push it to 24 because everybody knows Minnesota only has 4 picks and they want outs. But you're going to have a lot of competition. I think the Giants are going to try to come back in to get a quarterback.
This is where having 32 and this quarterback class becomes like it was in 2017, where the Ravens called you because they wanted Lamar Jackson. We actually talked about this scenario last night. If Sanders starts to fall and he's there, and the Giants now say, we didn't take him the first time, but now he's on the board, can we get ourselves back in to take LeBron's kid? I mean, not LeBron's kid. Geez, Deion's kid. Same situation, right? I mean, was this guy really getting drafted if it wasn't Deion's kid?
I think it's like 50-50. He doesn't go in the first round. I think the Giants might go back up. In fact, I would bet on the Giants going back up to get a quarterback, but I think it might be Milroe. And I think Jackson Dart's going to Pittsburgh. There is a good chance that he does not go in the first round.
Yeah, and there's a good chance, right, that at 32, there's a couple of the quarterbacks that you just mentioned there. And are these teams going to say, we want that 5th year? And, Philly's willing to move as always. And listen, going back to the Walter Nolan point, if you are wanting to make sure you get him, we know it's been well, publicized. The Eagles have 20 picks over the next 2 years. So they got to try to do something if there's a guy they really want. The question would be, Walter Nolan seems to be the obvious one. If he's fallen and he's there, but is there somebody that's not being buzzed about, an edge rusher or something that also would be someone if they started to dip a little bit? I know Mike Green, he's got the off the field stuff. If he starts to fall, do the Eagles do enough background homework on him to say, hey,
I don't think Howie wants those questions. I haven't heard a damn thing about Mike Green.
And that's the kind of guy that usually comes out of right field, though, right?
That's true, but
that's what I'm wondering, Mike. There's so much silence around this. I feel like I'm wondering. I said to John pre-show.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Are you hearing anything about a splash or something? I don't know what Howie's thinking.
You talk about 3D chess, make that 5D, 4D, whatever you want to call it. If he's doing interviews talking about not even looking at players who've had some allegations, domestic violence, whatever you want to call it, allegations, and then he doubles back to throw people off the scent to take Mike Green, that's some 4D chess. I don't think he wants to answer those questions.
What's the story that comes out the other day about how Big Dom is the best in the league at doing his homework, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, certainly that's what it'll lean on.
Absolutely is. We trust our process. We've done our homework. He also.
I'll tell you what, that's the best pass rusher in the draft, Mike Green.
17.5 sacks. Yes, absolutely. Off the field stuff is why he's probably not being talked about as a possibly a top 10 pick. Yeah. Mike Green, Marshall, he was at Virginia before that. So it's not like, hey, why is this guy at Marshall? He was at Virginia. had some stuff in high school, off the field problems, and then I think it's the second time.
Yeah, well, you can go back to Randy Moss. Why is he at Marshall? Well, he wasn't Notre Dame and Florida State, but
yes,
had some issues. So,
and look, and that would be the story. Hey, we've done our homework, blah, blah. And he also has the leg to stand on of, look, we haven't had a player get in trouble since Josh Huff. What was that? The last time someone had an off the field incident that was of
Daryl Worley.
Daryl Worley, yeah, baby.
Oh yeah, we brought that up. So Daryl Worley, when was that? 2020.
Oh, there's some other guy. I mean, they're little dust ups.
I'm talking about stuff that makes the national headlines, where you're talking about it all day on the talking head shows, and you're spending an hour here, talking about what to do with this guy. That has just not happened. So they do have a little bit of leeway to say, hey, we've done our homework. We have a guy that we feel confident in, that nothing's.
I'll tell you what, if they do that, I'll shake Howie's hand. Because he's thrown me off the scent if they're taking Mike Green.
Well, and Walter Nolan isn't he's had some incident. The reason why we're talking about Walter Nolan.
But his stuff is very nebulous. Like, he transferred a lot. Who gives a shit? I mean, that's the modern college football lens. I mean, his transfers go back to high school and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's all, to me, that's people saying, oh, I don't know about this kid, to try to get people off the scent.
Yeah, is he uncoachable? Is he a malcontent? Stuff to that.
Yeah, he missed some practices, things like that. That's more. That strikes me as more of, oh, this kid's really talented. Let's say he misses a bunch of and he may have missed a bunch of maybe he's an asshole. I don't know. That's one of the things we don't. That the two biggest things none of us know, Mike, is medical and the behind the scenes stuff. So I'm not saying it's not possible that people have real concerns about Walter Nolan, but it's all nebulous. It's not like, I said the same thing about Jalen Carter, who had a much bigger situation. I'm not trying to downplay it, but I say all the time, the minute you meet Jalen Carter, he's not Al Capone. He's not Robin Banks.
Yeah.
He's just a young, immature kid who made a big mistake, and he's turned out to be that. He's that's really nice. He's polite.
That's where at 32, you're in a spot where, people start falling because of these. When you have the talent and you're still there, you're thinking, why is this guy still there? There's usually something else that comes with it. The Eagles have done a really good job over the years of, listen, you and I have had these conversations, John, for years. Very few times has our conversation about a guy getting trouble off the field. Yeah, there's been a few, and they're not high-profile players generally. It's not like, hey, the star of the team, wielded a pistol in the middle of a rave. Like that those things just have not happened with this team. And look, you don't see that around the league all that often, although there are some higher-profile players that are either, many of them seem to be wide receivers who have some stuff, but not even like getting themselves in trouble with the law, for the most part. Yes, there are a few instances, but I think the Eagles do their homework. They feel pretty good. So if you heard his name called, Mike Green, it probably means they feel extremely confident that everything off the field, which, by the way, is not minor. His stuff is not minor off the field.
Yeah.
So,
well, Mike Green was weird because he was just volunteering information at the combine, which was interesting because people try to hide that stuff. But, well, I got in trouble in Virginia. It's like, whoa, all right. But yeah, great player. I've said, he's way ahead of the curve.
Now, if Mike Green was there and Walter Nolan was there, what do you do?
I'm taking Mike Green.
Well, I think
if everything clears out from Big Dom.
I think the Eagles.
Yeah, I'm saying all things that stuff is checked out. He's on their draft board, and they're the two.
I think personally, I think they have a bigger need at edge rusher, and from a pure football perspective, I take Mike Green. I think the Eagles would take Nolan.
And you guys think Mike Green's a top 10 talent in this draft?
I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he's got the best. Like most young pass rushers don't. They have to develop counter moves and stuff. He's like an old school starting pitcher. He's got like 5 pitches.
I'll tell you, the other guy, I know he's a local guy, but Ezaraku is another guy that I think is underrated. I like him, because he played at Boston College, not a football factory, but he's another guy who's got a lot of tools in the tool chest. He's got a lot of moves, very athletic. I mean, he's a guy that I think is going to drop. I don't know that he'll be there at 32, possibly though, but it goes back to the
talking toolsy. You're talking Shamar Stewart. Just from a tool standpoint.
All right.
That guy's
well,
built.
My question to throw into the mix was, and you kind of answered it, but you're saying you think that, okay, they have the pick of the guy that, like last year, okay, they had the pick of who they wanted. It could have been Quinyon Mitchell, who they took, or the guy from that went to Detroit from Alabama.
Terrion Arnold.
They had the choice. They could have taken either guy. They picked Mitchell over Arnold. It seems like they made the right decision so far. We shall see. If they have an edge rusher that's the top guy on their board and a D tackle who's the top guy on the board, you think that they need the edge guy over the tackle?
I think they right now, as their off-season roster, I think edge rusher's a bigger need than defensive tackle.
Because they did address edge rusher in free agency. They did not address tackle in free agency.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of excitement in the building over Moro Ajomo. I think there's they remember what addressing in free agency means this year. Technically, what's the difference from addressing edge with Azeez Ojulari and Josh Uche and addressing tight end with Harrison Bryant and Kylan Granson? A couple million more dollars. So that tells you something about Ojulari. But they're all lottery tickets. I mean, I've said it pretty consistently, Mike. They're not going into a season with their top 4 edge rushers being Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, Azeez Ojulari, and Josh Uche. I don't believe that. Not for 1 second. I don't believe that. They value the position too much. Well, yeah, we and it could be Bryce Huff. If you can't get anybody, because remember, you're at the mercy of other people here. And there could be 7 edge rushers that go in the first round. And they might all be gone. If there's a run, they might all be gone. And then they'll still get an edge rusher down the board some point, but it'll be more of the Landon Jackson type. Who's not going to probably help you right away, not going to be explosive, that type of thing. And if that's the way it shakes out, then they'll start looking at other avenues, I believe, whether it's trades down. If you look at the A.J. Brown year, where they made the big trade, and just look at their history of May signings and June signings and after draft signings, whether it's Bradbury, if you want to go all the way back to Chris Long and guys like that, LeGarrette Blount, and then the trade of C.J. Gardner-Johnson at the cut down to 53. Like, they will continue to try to address whatever they don't get. If they don't get a safety, all of a sudden after the draft, you might see Justin Simmons here. So if they can't get an edge rusher at the top of this draft, I can't tell you how, but they're going to address it further. They're not going into a season with how it looks right now.
Yeah. Well, and there's a outside, I don't want to say outside possibility. Anything's possible, we know, with Howie Roseman and the way he likes to do things and the amount of picks that they have. But I guess it's still possible that on draft night, they take a look at what's there when it's their turn to pick. If they really want an edge rusher, they have the ammunition to make a trade to try to go get a veteran established pass rusher. And some of them seem to be available still.
While I say that, I still think they like Walter Nolan better. Walter Nolan's, I would say, is their guy. I said it about Jalen Carter, that the most Eaglesy pick in this draft, Eaglesy, I've created that word. And that's understanding at 32. I'm not talking about number one because they're like everybody else. They think Abdul Carter's the best player, and if he's not, it's Travis Hunter. But I'm saying where they're starting and in the realm of possibility, Walter Nolan is the most Eaglesy pick of this draft. That's how I would describe it.
This is what I don't like about or what, not what I don't like, but what I think is complicated about Jordan Davis, right? Like we just said, do we need defensive tackles? I mean, to be fair, we did spend 2 first-round draft picks on defensive tackles. I know he plays a different position. He plays nose, but from a team-building philosophy, you did spend 2 draft picks on interior defensive linemen, and you still feel like you need another one after the departure of Milton Williams. I mean, that's not ideal. That's
to be fair, they drafted Milton Williams in the 3rd round too. So it says they think they need 3. And Jordan Davis is on the end of his deal. So they're also saying, look,
I don't have a problem with that. You got to constantly repopulate.
Yeah, the draft
corner. They're still talking about taking a corner.
Well, they lost 2 in free agency this year. But Jordan Davis, remember, he's in the last year of the deal. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option. So you also have to be looking at the possibility that we might let him walk. And you've got Moro Ojomo here, who was he a 7th-round pick, Moro?
7th, yeah.
Right. So I know that doesn't seem like a lot of draft capital, but he was a guy they drafted. Milton Williams in the 3rd. So, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't surprise at all because, Jordan Davis, it's not like he's locked up long-term here, and those 2 guys are taking up a lot of the snaps. Even Jordan Davis being here, Milton Williams being gone, and Morrow had a lot of snaps last year as that other guy, but does his snap counts go up, or do they want a guy to kind of take Milton's snaps and keep Morrow at the snaps he was at?
I think it depends. If you get Walter Nolan, yeah. I mean, Walter Nolan's day 1 replacement for Milton Williams. If you don't, then, I think they...
But the one thing is, none of those guys are really a replacement for Jordan Davis and what he does.
No.
Right.
And they still have to May 1st or May 2nd, whatever the date is, to pick up the 5th-year option. And by the way, for people on the 5th-year option, he's still here this year, even if they don't. Mm-hmm. And I think they will, simply because $13 million is not that expensive now. So I think ultimately the answer isn't whether they pick it up or not. It's whether they work out an extension, because that becomes more difficult. Then you have to value, what's he worth? What's it worth to have a 2-down run stuffer? Is it worth 18 million? Is it worth 20 million? What's it worth?
Yeah.
That's the more difficult conversation. But yeah, they play different positions. So they can't replace. In a lot of ways, they've been looking for a backup, but it's not easy to find a backup. They don't have a backup for Jordan Davis. They haven't had a backup for Jordan Davis. No. And when he doesn't play, they have to play differently. You saw it in Jonathan Gannon's first year when they didn't have a nose tackle. People didn't even know they were playing the Big Fangio scheme.
Well, and that's now we've added another name to the mix, Kenneth Grant. If he's there, he could be a Jordan Davis-esque type of player.
Yes, he could, but I think the Eagles have learned their lesson. They're not taking a nose tackle.
Correct. Well, I'm just saying, if you were saying, hey, we need a replacement for Jordan Davis, we don't want to pick up that 5th year, this is the guy right here, we like him, boom. Now, that's where you can maybe drop back. Although there's a lot of mock drafts that have him going right in that 29-30 area.
Yeah, I got him going. I'm going to do my one and only 1st-round mock draft today, but I tentatively have him going into the Chargers at like 22, 23, wherever they are, who lost Poona Ford. So they need that big body. For the Eagles, I mean, one of the guys they brought in was Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. It's more of a 2nd-round guy. If they draft somebody like that, then it's an indication, all right, well, they're going to move on from Jordan Davis probably after next year. And try to move forward with him and get cheaper at that position. I'm not saying I advocate it, but boy, they got to pay. I mean, Cam Jurgens this week, Mike, they got to pay a lot of people a lot of money.
Yeah. and $13 million, I think is what you said, for Jordan Davis. Just doesn't seem like the ROI is quite there, unless
that's the 5th-year option. It'll be much higher than that if they work out an extension. So that's the difficult part of it.
It's expensive to be good sometimes.
It's very expensive to be good. And at some point, I guess we should talk about Dallas Goedert. Anyway, Dallas Goedert's back. Anyway, at this point, I'm leaning towards he's just not coming back. I don't see how it works out.
Well, I think we touched on this a little bit last week, but the question of, did they just not want to pay him that number? Does he not want to play at that number? Like, if he said, guys, I'm willing to play on the deal, like, did they say, no, we don't want you to? Where are we with the structure of the deal and who's against it?
Well, I think both sides are against it because his cap number's too high. He's got the 5th highest cap number on the team. And the other guys ahead of him are Jalen Hurts and 3 All-Pros, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, and AJ. That's it. And then Dallas. So the cap number's too high. The Eagles want to get that down. And the money's too low, and Dallas wants to get that up. So, that's what happens when you're on the final year of a deal and the guaranteed money is dried up. Happened with Slay, and they worked it out once. They weren't willing to work it out this time. Seems to me, Mike, they're not willing to work it out with Dallas Goedert. Or maybe Dallas is not willing to work it out. Could be both sides.
And then it works in the next part of a conversation is, okay, tight end at that area. They've taken tight ends in the 2nd round, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. Do you start to now almost mimic what you did in 2017? You trade 32, you move back, you get an extra 2nd round pick, a 4th round pick, and then you use that 2nd round pick to move up and get the tight end that you really want, that you like in round number 2. And the question is, though, with Goddard, they drafted him. He didn't have to take over right away. He kind of was the other guy behind Ertz for a little while, and you got little flashes of him to the point where for 2-3 years, those two guys coexisted. This guy would have to come in essentially and have to be the guy almost instantaneously. Does that guy exist in the 2nd round?
Probably not, I would say. Not this year.
The biggest thing there is, like, why haven't we heard of anybody? They haven't brought anybody in. I mean, not that we've heard, at least. Like, that tight end position, it feels weird to me. And that's where I'm wondering if they're holding something close to the vest there, and maybe they'll, I don't know, trade for the dude in Vegas or whatever, Michael Mayer or whatever his name is. Something's got to happen at tight end now.
You would think. Unless you can Josh Sweat it and convince Dallas to play for less money for one more year. And then he leaves. I guess it's
tight
possible.
End class, though. It's good tight end class.
Yeah, it is. But to your point, Mike, other than Tyler Warren and Loveland, are you counting on anybody being a day one starter? Probably not. They could help you.
Who was the first one?
Tyler Warren, obviously.
Oh, Warren, yeah. Well, he's going to be way off the board.
Yeah, he's not.
You like Mason Taylor or Arroyo? Arroyo's had some injury issues.
Well, I love
Mason Taylor. I'd be very happy if the Eagles got him.
I don't think Mason Taylor's a day one starter, can play the majority of the snaps type player, but I think he could help you right away as a part of a rotation.
Yeah.
But not Dallas Goedert when he's healthy.
Yeah. That's the issue with, after Warren, most of the guys, I guess you're wondering, can they come in and play and do what Goddard does? Catch and block. The problem the Eagles have after Goddard is right now, Calcaterra can catch the ball. You're not worried about him as a pass catcher. He's not a great blocker. You had Jack Stoll here. He's obviously not here anymore. He's in New Orleans, but he was the blocking guy. You brought these two other guys in here. They probably will battle for possibly a second or third spot on this team. But none of them are replacements for Goddard. And I wouldn't think Calcaterra is the replacement for Goddard as the starter. So you almost have to find now. Are you okay bringing in a Mason Taylor, Loveland, and saying you and Calcaterra are the tandem now, and Calcaterra just has a bigger role? They've won games without Goddard with Grant Calcaterra and insert EJ Jenkins or somebody else's name here. So they've said, look, where is the level of importance of the tight end in our offense? And that's another question. We don't know what Kevin Batula thinks of the tight end. We might have an idea.
Well, I'm sure he likes the tight, but my whole thing. Well, I brought this up, and I'm not blaming you. Everybody says it. They won it without everybody last year. They won without Jordan Mailata, but nobody's saying they didn't lose. They won 16 of 17 games. They won 4 games without Jordan Mailata. So I hear a lot of people say it about Dallas. Nobody's saying, hey, let's go with Fred Johnson. Let's bring Fred Johnson back, because everybody knows.
Well, and I will say, in the biggest moments when you need it, Goddard,
he was phenomenal.
In the playoffs, he was there against Green Bay.
Yeah.
He's the guy who makes the big play. In the Super, he's the guy. So he might not be a 17-game impactful part of your offense in terms of catching the ball, yardage, and stuff. But in the big moments, in the big games, when Green Bay and LA and Washington are saying, we've got to focus on A.J. Brown and Smith, we can't let them beat us. Can that guy be the guy who says, for this week, I am good enough to beat you? Goddard has been that guy.
Oh, yeah. He's a big-time tight end. Now, to your point.
Mason Taylor would be the guy, though, I think that I wouldn't be surprised.
See, here's where I don't even care. Like, I had him taking Mitchell Evans. 6'5", 260. It's the one guy on day 3. You don't have to spend a lot of money on him. Spent a lot of draft capital on him. He's the one guy that can block. That's what your whole offense is based on. Piecemeal it. Get the big blocker. What is Mason Taylor going to do? He's your 4th option, maybe your 5th option. Get Jahan Dotson more involved. He might get traded, but if he's here, they don't get the ball to that guy anyway. And it's certainly not going to get the ball to that guy as a rookie. So get the guy who can help Saquon.
Well, that was a topic we talked about yesterday. You just threw out a little Dotson might get traded. Was that like a, hey, keep an eye on this? I haven't heard that one before, but I like that little slip in there, Johnny Mac.
Well, he's not. They're not going to pick up his 5th-year option, obviously. This is his last year in Philadelphia. He's obviously not a high volume player. So how he did it with Kenny Pickett, he might do it with Jahan Dotson. Flip him while you can. Not going to get a lot.
No.
But
so the question was, you have Dotson, you brought in Terrace Marshall, and then you have the 2 guys you drafted last year, Johnny Wilson and Aniyah Smith. Are those guys battling for a 3rd wide receiver position, or are they looking to upgrade that spot on draft night? Not in round 1, I would imagine.
No,
but
I've seen way too many people mock Luther Burden to the Eagles. Like, the Eagles aren't taking a wide receiver at the top of the draft. They might.
The hashtag no was out the minute that Jameson Williams was on the trade block yesterday. Not that I wouldn't take Jameson Williams, just you're not making that move.
Yeah, they just. I mean, as the Eagles play offense right now, and it could change, and it will change down the road. I mean, Jahan Dotson is a very good 3rd receiver. Nobody knows it until he makes a big play in a big situation, because they don't get that player the ball. So, what if you can get something for him? He's not going to be here in 2026. I think that's the way Howie thinks, or could be thinking. Not saying he's going to get traded, and they brought in, who knows what Marshall has left, if he has anything left, if he had anything to begin with. But it's an easy sort of move.
He had a flash in Carolina. And listen, we talk about this with quarterbacks all the time, and we give them the benefit of the doubt. A guy like Sam Darnold, well, he's with the Jets. Their offense stinks. Rex Ryan's the coach. You go to Carolina. Well, look who they don't have any weapons for him. Terrence Marshall has not played with the most grandiosos offensive talent
No, he
either.
has
He
not.
was a high second-round pick who, has a lot of traits and tools that maybe, like many of these guys, just needs to be in the right situation or the right offense. He was a guy, and I remember he had that one little year where he had like 500 and, a couple yards. He had some big weeks, and people were like, you got to get this guy. You got to trade. When this when the Eagles were really this was
struggling
for AJ
at
Brown
wide
this year,
receiver. Yeah.
The guy runs 4.3, 6'2". He went to LSU. He's a second-round pick. He played that offense with Joe Burrow and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, and he's on the level of those guys. Well, he's here now. Let's see. The Eagles saw something in him to see if they can get more out of him than Carolina and Vegas could.
Yeah. Mike, much anticipated round 1 tomorrow. We've been talking about it for months. What do you think the chances are that the Eagles even make a selection tomorrow? Think about it. They're sitting in the last pick of the night. Yeah. Howie loves to trade. It's a draft where everybody seems to want to trade back. What's it at? Is it a 50-50 that they pick tomorrow night? Are they even going to walk away with a player tomorrow night? What do you think?
I think something will happen for them tomorrow night, obviously. I don't know if it's them selecting at 32. It's, it might be them trading to get another picks on Friday. But the whole thing with the more picks on Friday is an interesting proposition because of they have 20 picks in the next 2 drafts. Are they going to bucket more draft choices? So that's why that does, wave a little bit of a red flag of, do you add more picks to the 20 that you already have? Because trading back would just add more picks. So is the most likely thing that you move up for that guy that we were banting about earlier? Is it, hey, we really have Mike Green high. He's fallen. We have the ammunition. Let's go get him. Hey, there's Walter Nolan. He's the guy we really want. We can't wait till 32. Let's move up. Let's go get him. He's at, what's that number? So I think something will, put it this way, Friday morning, you should be talking about something that will have the chat comments buzzing about what they did. And the whole weekend is going to be interesting. They have the 4 picks in round 5. I would anticipate they don't make those picks in round 5. And don't be surprised, too, that if it is a fall flat, meaning we have 20 picks this year, we'll take future picks in 2027 because we don't really need to worry about 2025 and 2026. We're loaded in those 2 draft classes, but we want even more in 2027 and 2028. Those are the kind of drafts, those are the kind of trades that people just completely go crazy about. But think about that Sixer trade in 2020. 5 years later, that pick is now looming over that team. Don't be surprised if the Eagles try to do some future stuff because they are so loaded up.
It's an interesting point by you.
That's always been a Howie. Howie thinks it's a market inefficiency because other people don't value future draft picks as much as current draft picks. And he said, that doesn't make any sense on any level. And he's right.
And
but
he has landed future first and future, the Saints gave him the future first for 1 year, and that ended up blowing up in their face. So I wouldn't be surprised with the amount of picks they have. If their big move is we're ending up getting a future something that 3 years from now, we're having this conversation and saying, you remember that trade they made? And Mike Gil was sitting on his back porch and he said they get a 2028 first. There it is.
That's the thing. I mean, but here's what Howie, Howie has the ability to do that. I always say, because Howie has job security. Most GMs don't have job security.
Absolutely.
That's why they don't value future picks. Like Joe Shane, trust me, he does not value future picks because he's not going to be taking them.
And that is such a inefficient way to run your business. Is you can't make moves with an eye on your future because your future is not guaranteed.
Yeah, market inefficiency. That's why Howie sees it as that.
In a copycat league, the one thing that is crazy is that the amount of mistakes that Roseman has made. If other teams knew the hatred that people had for Roseman, they would persevere through the hate if they really trusted the guy they had. These people in power make these decisions and change their minds so quickly because of their own insecurities and the fan pressure. It's unbelievable.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable that the amount of people who have the money and the power who are so insecure with it that they have to change. You know, you got basketball teams paying 4 coaches, 3 GMs, because they just simply can't put the trust in someone to say, hey, I trust it to hire you, but I don't trust enough to let you do the job.
Yeah, at Mike Gil Show. Make sure you follow Mike on the X platform, his YouTube channel as well. Subscribe there at Mike Gil Show 97.3, the Sports Bash, South Jersey. If you're local, best sports talk show in the Delaware Valley. That's what I say, not just because I'm on occasionally. I'll be on draft day, I believe, at 3:00. I'll be in the car probably, Mike, but I'll be there.
Yes,
and
setting up the show. I'm going to be out and about. If anybody's in the area, we'll be at Ocean at the gallery. We'll have the Super Bowl trophy with us. You can get your picture taken with the trophy. And we will be there all day, 2 to 6.
You're going to get the guy with the white gloves.
The white glove guy's coming out. Yes.
Yeah.
My guy, Nate.
Yeah, there you go. Mike, thank you, brother. We appreciate you joining in. We'll talk to you next week, hopefully after a big NFL draft weekend. Thank you, brother.
All right, we'll see you.
Thanks, bud.
Mike Gil joining us here on Birds 365. Great job from Mike Gil. We're going to talk to Brandon Lee Goutton coming up in hour number 2 here at 9:20. Good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, we are getting closer to this thing, man. And, you know, I
forgot Mike, to lock down Mike. God, I wanted to lock him down. I was give him the option, but I'll try to text him. Trade up, stay put, 32. Trade up. Pick a player to trade up for if you got to stay put or if you trade down. Should have locked him down, but oh well.
Yeah, that's what you did. You did trade up for Nolan, trade down for Oladejo, or stay put for Shamar Stewart, right? That's what you had in your opening mock.
Correct.
I like that. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Walter Nolan's an interesting one because I kept doing those damn mock. I was getting so pissed last night. I'm like, stop letting him fall to 32. He's not going to fall to 32. But they kept letting him fall to 32. So, John, I made my 6 pick or my picks or whatever it was just based on that. I don't know what the hell does it mean, you know, with that thing. But Nolan was there at 32, so I took Nolan at 32. Benjamin Morrison was there at 64, so I took him at 64. Oladejo was there at 96, and that's where I'm like, he's not going to be there at 96, but he was there. Jalen Reed, the safety from Penn State. Dylan Fairchild, the guard from Georgia.
That's a great draft, yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous draft. I don't think it would ever happen like this. But and then I got Ty Robinson with the last pick. Dylan Fairchild, Isaac Tesla. That's 164. Trevor Etienne, the running back, at 165, just because Jaden Blue is off the board. So they gave me a pretty good grade on it, but I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's very likely. That's the problem.
Yeah, those mock draft simulators, man. Well, it's easy to get good grades on them because you just take the player they have. If you just take the player they have the highest rated at the time.
Player there, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I've seen so many people, not even mock draft simulator people. I'm talking about guys publishing their mock drafts who had Walter Nolan fall into the Eagles. Look, I'm not saying it's not possible. I asked Jeremiah the question. He doesn't believe it. I don't believe it. But, if you would have told me Nolan Smith fell to 30, I would have laughed at you going into the draft. There were people talking about if the Eagles couldn't get Carter and they started at 10, I think, that they would take Nolan Smith. And he ended up at 30. And I tell that story all the time. I said, I texted a GM friend of mine, ex-GM, after the Eagles took Carter. I said, what do you think, basically? And he didn't get back to me, and I, wasn't expecting him to because everybody's busy, crazy on draft night. And then they get Smith at 30, and I didn't text him again, and he just texted me back, and he said, are you effing kidding me?
Yeah, right.
It's like teams are just letting good players go to the Eagles. It's just crazy. And it took a while with Nolan Smith, but sometimes it takes a while. It's not always immediate. But he looks like he's going to be a very good player, and Jalen Carter looks like he's already an all-pro player. And and who knows how high he can go. But Cooper DeJean at 40, part of that was injury related. But I mean, the Eagles published that they thought the Rams were coming up to get Cooper DeJean, and they were all pissed off because they wanted to go up to 40 and said, all right, that was the point. They said, we got to go up and get him. And the Rams ended up taking Braden Fisk. And by the way, it worked out beautifully for the Rams as well. And they got Cooper DeJean. I mean, so because Walter Nolan shouldn't go 32. Doesn't mean he won't go 32, because if people are concerned, and there's a lot of bad organizations that make bad decisions, and there's a lot of scared organizations. So if there's anything, they don't want to consider it. And there's a bunch of nebulous stuff about Walter Nolan, transferring and missing meetings and blah, blah, blah. And some teams might just say, you know what? I don't want to deal with that. We don't have a strong enough culture to deal with that. Right. The Eagles are like, bring them in. Another advantage they have. And just, over the past day, and this could be subterfuge or what, there's two guys. I should have mentioned this earlier. Will Johnson from Michigan, the cornerback, and Jihad Campbell. All these injury things are popping up. So they might go a little bit lower than people expect because there's some injury concerns. And that's the kind of stuff like we don't have, there's no way, I don't care what anybody says, there's no way we have that same information that NFL teams have when it comes to health and safety and medical checks and then the background checks. So those are two. And when you think about the piece of the puzzle, those are two big pieces of the puzzle that we have no information on. And, I don't have a Dom who's, go out and do research on the backgrounds of people. So those are two really, really big parts of the process. DK Metcalf. I mean, for years, the Eagles got destroyed. They didn't have him on their board because of medical concerns. And they weren't the only team there, but he had a neck issue and people thought it was potentially serious and didn't know if he hold up long-term, evidently built up his body to the point where, and they weren't even going to consider him until day 3 because of the medical issue. And, fans don't know that. And they just say, oh, they're so stupid. If DK Metcalf didn't have medical issues, he wouldn't have went 64th.
Yeah.
And obviously, AJ went that year too. That was the year AJ went. It's 51, I think. But yeah. So why don't you take DK Metcalf after he turns into DK Metcalf? Well, there were 63 picks that could have taken DK Metcalf.
Yeah, right.
Man, a lot of teams were concerned about his potential neck issues.
You think the Eagles make a pick tomorrow night?
Well, here's how I describe it. I think it's very unlikely they take a pick at 32. I think I think they'll either trade up or trade out.
You seem to have, and I don't want to speak for you, you seem to have grown in terms of you thinking that the Eagles could trade up. A couple of weeks ago, I felt like you didn't see that at all. You seem like you've come around to that idea a little bit more.
Well, I have, because in what I said a couple of weeks ago was, I don't see the player that they would go up and get. I don't see that player. Now I see the player, and it's Walter Nolan. But I always said, look, if they fall in love with a player, yeah, they'll go up and get him. from just the standpoint of how people look at this draft, and most teams say 20 to 50 is going to be similar grades. By that, logically, it's all right. If you can get the same level of talent at 50 as you can get at 20,
right?
It's more likely you'll trade down. And it might still be more likely because everything I don't think there's a bunch of players where the Eagles are going up. I think there's one. You could argue some edge rushers in a much more targeted, but say 24, because that's where Minnesota is. That's pretty big jump, 32 to 24. I think the only player in that category is Walter Nolan. 32 to 29, 32. I mean, that's more very, very targeted. And maybe there's an edge rusher that they like, that they might do something like that for. But as far as a big jump, and I consider some other people may not consider it, but 32 to 24 is pretty significant. And if you go even higher than that, it's really significant.
John, if you're sitting at 32, Walter Nolan's already off the board. Pierce is off the board. Ezeraku's off the board. All of your edge rushers, defensive linemen that you're interested in the first round are off the board. But Malachi Starks is sitting at 32. You think they take that player, or let's leave Oladejo, leave him on the board? You think they'd go for a player like Oladejo?
Well, like I said, when I did trade, I did mention Starks. He's my insurance policy. If everything falls the incorrect way, and they're forced to stay at 32, I think they would take Starks. But very, very low probability, I'd say. Because I think they'd rather have Oladejo.
Right.
And I'm not sure they want to take him at 32. They might.
Yeah, but if they don't have a draft trade back partner, they're not
exactly.
going to wait till 64. They'll probably just take the player. Yeah,
it's possible. Like he could go before that. He's the guy that, and the East Carolina cornerback too, which I haven't heard a lot of hype around. And I can't even think of his name off the top of my head. Rebel Shannon. I have to look it up. Especially with this late talk about Will Johnson and injury concerns. Shannon Revel from East Carolina. He's another guy. If he goes in the first round, it wouldn't shock me at all. And to a lesser degree, the kid from Florida State, too. I don't want to butcher his name, but it's Azaria, something like that, Thomas. Those two guys at corner might surprise people, I think. And then Milroe, I don't even know if Milroe is much of a surprise at all now. Like if he goes first round, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Right. I think he's an interesting one in this draft, man. If he's sitting there at 64, do you think the Eagles would even consider it?
Milroe? No. Like I said, I think the Eagles.
I don't think so either, but you've seen it been floated around now in the ether.
Well, because of what happened before. But,
yeah,
again, I think the Eagles are more logical about it. And from their standpoint, like people just look at the end and say, oh, they won a Super Bowl and Jalen Hurts has turned into Jalen Hurts and he's on Time Magazine. He's on Men's Health.
Yeah,
they went through it. It wasn't all peaches and cream, and it wasn't the plan. And they know it wasn't the plan. And it created a bunch of issues that they bounced back from. But you don't necessarily want to repeat that. Not that I think Jalen Hurts wouldn't be strong enough to handle it. But he's 26 years old,
Yeah, I'm not saying I would do it. I'm just throwing it out there because, look, there are people who bring up the business of the NFL where it's like, you got a high-paid quarterback. Many people will point to what the what the passing game did when you're paying receivers like they are, when you're paying Dallas Goedert. And they might say, hey, this is business. They're going to try and get cheaper in the next 2 or 3 years and have the offer. I'm not saying I would do that. I'm just saying I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility for a team to think like that. That wouldn't be the first or the last time that a team would do that.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard from years the thought process of just go to the college formula and just keep rotating quarterbacks, but I don't think that works.
I don't like that.
I don't. That's a loser mentality. That's what,
I agree.
If you find a quarterback in the NFL, you hold on to him like grim death, and they can play a long time, as you can see with. People talk about Tyler Shuck and why the NFL teams. Another guy who might. I don't think he's going to go first, but I think he might go 33rd to Cleveland. A lot of people say, well, he's 26 years old. Yeah, but you can play till you're 35, 38 if you're Drew Brees and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers plus 40 at quarterback because they made the game. So, you don't have to worry about getting your head taken off or, it's much safer from a quarterback standpoint. You can play the game for a very long time. So if Tyler Shuck turns into a big-time quarterback, who cares? He's going to be there till he's 38. And I don't know if he's going to turn into a big-time quarterback, but the age is not a concern as much at that position. Age is a big concern at corner and wide receiver, pass guys, because when that deteriorates for a wide receiver or cornerback, that's a big deal. Quarterback, if you can play the position, not so much.
Yeah, you can play a long time, obviously. Look at some of the older guys around today. All right, Johnny Mac, good stuff. Let's get to our next commercial break. We're going to have BLG, Brandon Lee Goutton, coming up here in a couple of minutes on Birds 365. 1 day away, everybody, from the NFL draft. We'll be right back on Birds 365.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Your financial future is on the line. Are you ready for what's next? At Leone & Company Wealth Management, we help young professionals, business owners, and pre-retirees navigate the complexities of building and protecting wealth. For young professionals, we'll help you grow your wealth, plan for your future, and make the most of your hard-earned dollars. For business owners, we provide strategies to protect your company, manage risks, and create a lasting legacy for both your business and personal wealth. For pre-retirees, we'll design a plan to secure your retirement, ensuring you can live comfortably and confidently in your next chapter. Whether you're just starting out, managing a thriving business, or preparing for retirement, we're here to help you take control of your financial future. The first consultation is on us. Get the advice you need without the cost. Let's make your financial vision a reality. Take the next step. Scan the QR code to schedule your free consultation today. And of course, go Birds.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you, Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong as the #1 health insurer in the region. No IBX is always looking out for you.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Welcome back in, everybody, to a Wednesday edition of Birds 365. Just one day away from the NFL draft, about 34 hours and 36 minutes until we kick off round 1 of the NFL draft. We're joined now by Brandon Lee Goutton, BLG of Bleeding Green Nation. Give him a follow at Brandon Goutton and read all his work at bleedinggreennation.com. BLG, how you doing on this Wednesday, brother? One day out from the draft.
I'm doing good, guys. I'm excited to see what happens here on Thursday night.
All right, we're going to pin you down right away. I'm going to give you 3 options, BLG. Trade up scenario, who's that player for the Philadelphia Eagles? Forced to stay put at 32, who's that player? And targeted trade down, who's that player for BLG?
Yeah, like this. From the jump. I think trade up, and I also think trade up is maybe the most likely thing the Eagles can do on Thursday night, just because if you know, the discourse about this draft class en masse seems to be true about teams not necessarily being in love with these players. I think Howie Roseman, as we've seen in the past, typically really has a tier of players that he likes to, you know, get from, and there's a big drop off after that. And I think there are going to be opportunities to move up. Obviously, the Minnesota Vikings are kind of like the landing spot there at number 24, considering they only have the 4 picks in this draft. And the Eagles are flush with picks to move up. So that seems like a natural pairing. I'll say I have a hard time Walter Nolan is going to fall to that point. But if there's a chance he is in around that area, I think, you know, that is the kind of player you're looking for at a move up there at 24. At 32, that's a hard one. I think the one at 32 is hard for the standpoint of we even did a mock draft at SB Nation with all the writers from each team blog, and you know we weren't doing trades as much, and I made the pick at 32. I was like, I really didn't love the board there. I took Gray Zabel. I don't think he's going to make it there based on what we've seen since about everything that's saying about his value. I think you're looking at someone maybe like Donovan Ezeraku there, let's say. And then if it's a trade back, maybe it's more of like a Nick Scorton at that point, and I think it'd be a smaller kind of trade back.
I like it. I think Nick Scorton's a safe prospect. That's who I would focus on. But I'm too safe. I give the Eagles credit. They're a lot more willing to take chances than me. And I think everything I hear, BLG, the whispers coming to me, they want a trade space guy. So I'm focusing on Walter Nolan, and I get it from the standpoint of everybody thinks everybody's the same, so you might as well go with the high ceiling. So 20 to 50 is same. Walter Nolan, Stewart, high, and I keep hearing Oladipo, the UCLA edge rusher, and that guy. It would not surprise me if he's one of those surprise first round picks from everything I hear around the NFL, not just the Eagles, like a lot of teams like him. And I wouldn't touch him till the 3rd round, I said earlier, because he's, 1 year off ball linebacker. Then they move him out the edge rusher. But we've seen that in the past and it's worked.
So also a Vic Fangio type of player.
I think everybody's a big Fangio type of player. Did you see Josh? I should have mentioned that. Josh Shapiro. Did you see his interview?
I saw some of it. I didn't watch the whole thing.
That was great. By the way, the governor did a good job.
Yeah.
And I got a kick out of because he asked Vic at one point if he could come up with a plan to stop Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
Do it every day at practice, basically.
And he wasn't like smiling or he wasn't kidding either.
He's like, yeah, I do it every day at practice. So anyway, for those who want to see that interview, it's on the governor's YouTube page, I think. But anyway, he did a good job. So I forgot to mention that. Back to the draft, though.
Well, he also said in there, I like good players. They make me look smart. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's more of a thing in the secondary though than up front. Like I think he just wants good players up front, and they'll figure it out. The secondary, and that's where guys like Malachi Starks, and I've heard they're interested in Barron, but I don't. The Jahdae Barron from Texas, and you think about Quinyon Mitchell last year. What the difference between Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold? Quinyon came in with the off coverage rep, and that's what Big does.
Mm-hmm.
All those different zones. So I think it's a bigger thing in the secondary than up front. And I just think they want a defensive front player, and they want a guy with a high upside. That's where I think the Eagles are.
Yeah, it's tough this year in terms of like these past 4 years or so. We've kind of, I feel like, had a good sense of what was going to go down. Obviously, as they were higher up the board.
Yeah.
Even after the year after they lost the Super Bowl, because they had the pick from the Saints. And then even the pick they made at 30 that year, Nolan Smith, that was kind of something that was very much on the radar, and people thought, including myself, might even happen at 10 in that draft.
Same here. I thought that, yeah.
So this year, I feel like we're just not hearing as much. And obviously part of that, I think, is okay, so we've heard some rumors they like Gray Zabel, for example, but again, I don't think he's going to make it there, or Walter Nolan, don't think he's going to make it there. So it's kind of hard to totally forecast that. I feel like some of the names, I'm hearing that could be more realistic. Like you hear about like Mason Taylor, which would seem like a little bit of a surprise if it's at 32. Maybe that's a trade down. Scorton, it's just it's less concrete than it has been in previous years.
BLG, how do you view this tight end situation in Philly right now? They're keeping it close to the vest. I've been following on bleedinggreennation.com the top 30 visit tracker. Still no tight end listed. The owner, when he spoke about Dallas Goedert, basically clumped him in with CJ Gardner-Johnson, who is gone. So I'm like, is Goddard gone? Like, how do you view this whole situation? And then, just to follow it up, when will they address this? Do you think they take a player in the second round, third round? How do you see this playing with the tight end in Philly?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting in terms of the timing of this maneuver. I think you can look at the draft two different ways in terms of, number one, if a team doesn't get, the tight end that they like, then okay, all of a sudden maybe they're more willing to make a deal with the Eagles. I think the Colts are like a team to watch and have been a team to watch in that regard. On the flip side, if the teams that do want tight ends do get tight ends, then maybe there isn't a market for Dallas Goedert. And maybe the Eagles wouldn't hate that in the sense that they can come back to him and be like, hey, there really now is really no market for you. No one wants to trade for you. Everyone took a tight end or whatever. So maybe the best situation here is we figure out how to make this work for one more year, like the Eagles did with Josh Sweat last year. Maybe that's a little too high in the sky. Maybe that ship has sailed. But until Goddard's gone, I'm going to assume there's at least some kind of possibility that the two sides make it work together. Although I don't think that is necessarily the most likely outcome based on what we've heard to this point. But my whole thing, with the Eagles and their future with Dallas Goedert, or lack thereof, has been like they don't have a clear kind of replacement plan in place. So maybe that changes, through the draft. But it is weird, as you pointed out, Zander, like they haven't had a pre-draft visit. I don't think that means they will not take a tight end. And again, hearing still rumors of interest in different tight ends. And we don't know literally every pre-draft visit that they've had. Right. So it's possible they could have had some in there. But it's weird that we haven't heard any.
We got 24, 25, 30.
Close.
So it's a small range that there could be a tight end there.
You know what's strange to me about Dallas Goedert? If he were like playing somewhere else, and he had the same career, which wouldn't happen, but just for this exercise, and you say, all right, he's 30 years old, he's kind of expensive, where would his fits be? You would look at, well, it's probably a contender that needs a tight end. Like, I don't think there's a better fit in the NFL for Dallas Goedert than Philadelphia.
Right.
Literally. And I find it very hard to believe that the Eagles don't want him. So I almost, from that standpoint, when I look about it, I think it's almost got to be more. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think they want to give him multiple years and a bunch of extra money, but just in the short term. So I think it's got to be more Dallas's side from that. When I look at it from that perspective, agree or disagree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think if Dallas Goedert is like willing, more than like totally willing to come back on his current deal, I don't think the Eagles are like no. Like I don't think that is the hard line in the sand that they're drawing. I think it's more of like Dallas Goedert's camp, like you said, is kind of wants more security, and the Eagles are like, no, that's not going to work. We will honor the contract. Again, I don't know the full details of the conversation, but that seems to be more of where the issue would arise. I don't think ideally the Eagles would want to pay what Goedert is making this year, but I think again, there's a way to maybe make that work or finagle that a little bit from their end. But yeah, it's a weird situation. But again, will be really interesting to see how we learn more about this situation and also the Jordan Davis situation too. With the 5th-year option deadline looming here in just like a week or two on May 2nd, we're going to find out more about the outlook of a lot of players on this roster.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting one. I think it might be answered, BLG, after the draft. Like if they draft that Tyleek Williams, the guy that they brought in, a 330-pound guy, nose tackle, true run stopper. I think Jordan Davis is as good as gone, but that is a complicated contract set up with Jordan Davis. But, I brought this up, and I want to bring this up to both you guys, actually. I brought this up. I saw a graph or a social media chart the other day, and it was listing out the run-heavy versus pass-heavy teams and in 2024 regular season. The top 6 run-heavy teams last year were the Eagles 1, 55%, Ravens 2, 52%, Green Bay 3, 51%, and then Steelers, Lions, and Bills all 49, 48, 47%. Then you have the 6 pass heaviest teams. You had Bengals, Browns, Raiders, Jets, Seahawks, and Cowboys. Now, 6 teams on the left who are run teams are playoff teams. The 6 teams on the right who are pass teams were not playoff teams. I'm not saying that's a perfect indicator. I understand that they pass more when you're losing games and all of those things, but I think because of that, they like Jordan Davis. They want to be able to stop the run, and I think you're going to start seeing the resurgence of the running back continue just because of the undersized defensive players. But I think they're going to keep Jordan Davis for that reason. Do you think they'll pay Jordan Davis the $18 million a year it might be?
You know what's really funny? I saw a clip the Eagles put out yesterday with Howie Roseman where he's like answering questions. They kind of have done that with other, I know Vic Fangio did.
Yeah, with Vic. Yeah, Vic dropped the cards when he did.
yeah, he's not shy to skip a lot of the questions.
Yeah,
I think Howie did too, some of them. But anyway, maybe I'm making too much of this, but my radar, like my antenna went off on this one where they ended the video in that clip. Howie Roseman, he's like talking about how much he loves the draft and like drafting good players. And there's a clip of him, like as that is being said, holding up the jersey with Jordan Davis from after they just drafted him. And again, maybe I'm making too much of that, a little too conspiracy brained here. Obviously, Howie himself isn't making that video, but like, I don't know. That just kind of, that kind of interested me. And again, as I've kind of, what I lean on here is that I just don't think Howie wants to, and you just look at his track record, by the way, he is not like quick to give up on draft picks. And it has to be, they have to be like, I think pretty obviously terrible for him to move on. And even then, you could say they stayed a little bit longer than they really should have. So I just don't think, I don't know what they're going to do with Jordan Davis, but I don't think it's as simple as like, oh, he doesn't like him anymore. I don't think it's that simple.
Yeah, well, I think if we're up to Howie, Bryce Huff would be a big part of the conversation, but I don't know if Vic will permit it. But to Zander's original point, I'm champing. I'm like, because I hear that all the time. That's the correlation causation argument. I mean, in the history of the NFL, the good teams run the ball more because they're ahead late, and that now. There's context to it because the Eagles were a very run-heavy team.
Yeah, right.
The Ravens are a very run-heavy team purposefully because they're good at it. But every single year, the best teams have the are skewed at the top in the run-pass ratio, and the worst teams are skewed at the bottom because they're always behind, and you can't run the ball when you're behind. Drives me nuts, BLG. Anyway. I just wanted.
No, you're right, John. That context is certainly important. But the other thing is, like, I'll ask you, BLG, and John, you can respond too. Do you think the running game is going to make a resurgence? Not that it ever went like completely away, but I do think with Saquon, you know, some of the draft picks that have happened with running backs, you're talking about another one who might be a top 10 pick this year. And then the other side is defense has gotten so small. Edge rushers are smaller. Linebackers are smaller. Like, I think the natural pendulum is just going to swing to favor guys who can bully you off the ball like the Eagles did all last year. Do you see that happen in BLG in the NFL, or is that too far-fetched?
No, to some extent, I think that's absolutely true. You know, I don't think it's like night and day. And you know, even if that does swing that way, I don't think that's going to be forever because, you know, everything course corrects itself, especially in the NFL at some point. But I do think, you know, we've leaned a little bit more that way than people would have expected, is what I would say, in the year 2025. I think people, you know, did not, you know, I think we just saw pass happy league for so many years, and we kind of figured that's just what the NFL is now entirely. And it still is, and by and large, but this past year seemed to be a little bit less of that given the context of other years.
Flip that on the other side, because everyone sees that as a big advantage for the Eagles, and it certainly was offensively last year, the whole bully ball mindset. Somebody on the other side going to figure out how light the Eagles are on the edge? At some point, do they need to get some size on the defensive side of the football?
I will say Nolan's pretty good against the run for being an undersized.
Right.
Yeah.
He was better against the run at Georgia than he was as a pass rusher.
I think that's instinct right there.
Yeah.
But
and you see some of these like crushing hits he has. He had one obviously in the Packers game. That was it Elgton Jenkins he knocked out.
Yeah, he's a good player too.
And in the Super Bowl too. Trey Smith, like same thing early in the game.
Yeah,
like,
Kelsey was Travis was raving about Nolan Smith.
You know, he's not big measure like the measurables wise, but he plays like very bigger than he is. And Jalen Hunt's not like he's not small, he's not huge, he's not hulking, he's not massive for an edge rusher. But I wouldn't.
Well, I always say BLG, he's got the frame to add weight. I'm interested to see him. And how much, because he was a safety at Cornell, and he's already 250.
But you do see that a lot where guys come into the league and they like really bulk up over the first couple of years. Like I could see that with him. That picture of him next to BLG, or not BLG, Brandon Graham, BG. Brandon Graham was funny to me. I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize Jalix was that much bigger than BG, but he is definitely taller. Now, will he fill out? That's the question.
Yeah, I do think it's a valid point in terms of like it feels like they have to add like a little bit, especially when you lose Brandon Graham, right? Like because Brandon Graham has more of that traditional defensive end mold. Even Josh Sweat, you know, like a bigger guy, a little bit lean in some ways, but still has like that length and size. At least
maybe that's where Nick Scorton makes sense. You know, BLG, John and I have talked about him a lot.
Yeah. See, he has that build, I guess, more so. He's still not like huge in terms of edge rusher. You look at like his mock draftable chart is 21 percentile height, 33 percentile weight. So yeah, he's bigger than Nolan Smith, you know, but certainly by comparison. I do think they would like to add a little bit more size, ideally.
Yeah, he's not James Pierce though. You know, James Pierce is
he's a defensive back out there. It looks like I can't get over that.
All right, full disclosure at 32. Because I hate picking. I don't know about you, BLG, but when I only do one mock draft, Eagles only, and I only do 132 first round, that'll come out today. But I hate projecting trade. It's just so dumb. There's no, I don't know who's going to trade where. So I just try to put guys in where they might go. And 32, here's my conspiracy theory. 32, I want Stewart because I think the Eagles want a trade space prospect. I think he might go 9, he might go 11, but he also might fall to 32. So I picked him. Now, the Eagles brought in Scorton and they brought in Shamar Turner, a bunch of Shamars down there, Texas A&M. My conspiracy theory is they brought them in to find out more about Stewart. Subterfuge or my off the reservation?
I don't think there's 0% chance they talked about Shamar Stewart, you know, like I don't think that's totally unrelated. especially how they've talked about in the past the cohabitation matrix.
Yeah.
And,
yes. Good pull.
Bringing it back and leaning in different ways to find information on these guys, because that to me is the most the biggest kind of like hole in the NFL draft media lead up complex, like the character stuff like that. To me, that's like almost what matters most to me. And it's not, I mean, obviously you have to have some threshold of talent and production and athleticism, sure, but at the end of the day, like I didn't always feel this way, but seeing over the years about certain players who didn't make it, I think some of them, I'm not going to slander them here, but I think you can kind of figure out who they are. Like that drive to be great. It can't be the only thing, but it's a big part of the equation, and it's so hard. Like, how do you can watch film, you can be one of these, and I love the guys who watch, and ladies and whoever who watch film and give their analysis. I think that's a great tool to have. But if you're not pairing it with like how driven are they to be great, like that's a big part of the puzzle that's missing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I said it before you came on today. I said there's two things. I said that, and then the health stuff and the medical stuff. That, like DK Metcalf, that the Eagles got killed. Why didn't you think they made that? He was off the board. He was a medical red flag. They wouldn't have considered him until day 3. We have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea on the medical stuff and what you're saying. We don't have Dom to go down and try to figure out what's going on with some of these people. But in the case of Stewart, I think it's more about, all right, he's this phenomenal athlete. He's got everything you need from a trade standpoint, but he had no production in college. So I think you bring in Scorton and you bring in Shamar Turner and you say, what were you doing? What were you trying to accomplish? Why is this guy not producing? Because he should be a top 10 level pick from an athleticism standpoint. Could be way off the reservation, but
I'm subscribing to your conspiracy there, John. I think you're on to something.
I like it as a conspiracy. I think it's a valid, possible conspiracy.
Well, there's also a similar thing that happened with the Georgia defense, right? Where those guys were great players, but not everybody was productive in that defense. Well, productive, but not, maybe show up on stat sheet productive just because of the way the defense worked. I think that's pretty interesting there, Johnny Mac. Good stuff.
All right. Good. I was expecting you to laugh at me and put on the tinfoil hat, but I'll take it.
Yeah. BLJ, is there any guys in this draft, in this top, that you really don't want to see the Eagles select, that you're just like, please don't take that guy? It'll be a travesty, or in your opinion, it would be. Any guys like that for you in this draft?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good way to frame it. I think I actually kind of have a better idea of like who I don't think the Eagles will / I don't want the Eagles. I don't think they should take
right.
Than I really do this year. More of like last few years, again, like kind of really pounding the table for a certain player and feeling like this really makes sense. Less of that this year, but more of like, no, they're not going to take that guy, or I don't see them taking that guy. James Pierce Jr. up there for me. Like, again, he just looks like a defensive back, and I just can't see Vic Fangio, like, especially after we lived through the Bryce Huff experience, like loving that guy. Like, I struggle to see that happening. I also think, like, if he falls to the Eagles, like, what does that say? Like, about, not to, obviously, like, they're going to have to take someone. So, like, there's reasons every player is going to fall. But, like, a player with this kind of production, like, I just think there's more holes in his game than, like, you really love to be taking at that point. If a player with the production and things, like, kind of things he has going for him falls, I think that's like a big red flag, basically, more so than other players if they fell. So I think he doesn't make sense. That's probably the big one for me. I just don't even see it happening.
It's interesting because he was so productive in college.
Yeah.
Now, the thing I don't like about the tape is that he just blows by everybody. So when you get to the NFL and your first move doesn't work, what's that second, third, fourth pass rush move look like? That would be my big question with him. But boy, he was productive, BLJ.
So was Derek Barnett, and it's different. And
I was about to ask you, is there any Derek Barnett spilling over? Because he was so productive. He broke Reggie White's sack records, BLG.
Yeah, 33 sacks at Tennessee, 10, 10, and 13. Like, and he was also pretty young too at the time.
Yeah.
younger than the average. But yeah, and Pierce had 19 and a half.
Yeah.
Not bad, but not like so otherworldly that like you have to take that guy. And yeah, I don't love the profile with him. So that's a buyer beware for me.
All right, so who's the BLG guy? Not Howie, not what you think Howie's going to do. Who's the player in the best case scenario? And it might be the same, but who's the player you want more than anybody else? And it doesn't have to be a 32. It could be trade up, trade down. Who's the BLG guy?
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm going to go chalk with this and say Walter Nolan. But again, I don't think it's going to happen. I'm sure you guys may have seen Peter Schrager's mock draft today that he did, and Walter Nolan's going to the 49ers at 11.
Yeah,
well, that's great. Yeah. I've seen Walter go as high as 9. And I only I'm not talking about, people are doing mock drafts on PFF or Pro Football Network. I'm reputable guys, not that anybody's not reputable, but guys who have an understanding of the league. That's generally the only mock drafts I'll take a look at occasionally. And I've seen Nolan as high as 9 and as low as 32, and Stewart as high as 9 and as low as 32. It's crazy. Can you remember the wild ranges of these prospects in this draft? Certain guys who may be top 10 and may fall to the Eagles at 32. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, it feels especially, like relevant this year with the Eagles being so far back and then having to account for all these different possibilities that either could happen very realistically or just not even be in the ballpark of what will be happening on Thursday night. So it's been weird to parse through. Looking at here that Daniel Jeremiah's top 150, like players I love. Again, I think Gray Zabel would make a lot of sense for this team.
He's a good player.
And maybe even a trade up at some point if the Eagles feel like okay, this is our right guard right now. He obviously has tackle experience. Maybe you can if he doesn't work out there or something, or you need to shift in the future. I feel like you have optionality with him. I feel like you can find the spot.
Yeah, he's got some Zach Martin. He can play anywhere.
Yeah, he's interesting. He's a very Eaglesy pick. The thing I love about the range on all these players is that dumb teams make dumb decisions every draft. But like with the subjectivity increasing in this draft, I think you're going to have an even higher chance or a higher rate of dumb decisions by teams, which will favor the Eagles, obviously sitting at 32. But that will be interesting. BLG, my last question for you here, brother, and we appreciate you doing it on this Wednesday. Make sure you guys follow BLG at Brandon Goutton and read all his work at Bleeding Green Nation. Truly one of the best Eagles websites out there. BLG, I'm always interested in the NFC East. All right, you got the Giants at 3, you got the Cowboys at 12, you got the Commanders at 29. Just kind of can rapid fire through them, but where do you see each of those teams kind of going in this NFL draft?
Yeah, Giants really interesting, obviously. What they do early seems to be that they are going to take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, depending, and I would think Carter.
I'm hoping Travis Hunter fall. I don't know about you, but I don't want to see Abdul Carter in Giants blue.
Yeah, it's not really ideal, but as long as the Giants don't have a quarterback, I think the Eagles will be okay. That's how I felt last year when they took Malik Neighbors. Everyone's like, "Oh, Malik Neighbors is awesome," and sure, he is, but it doesn't matter if they don't have a quarterback. So I think they're going to go that direction, then probably try to somehow get a quarterback at the top of the second round, or maybe trade up at some point. Whether that's Shadur Sanders, Jackson Dart seems to be the name that's gaining a little bit more steam there. We'll see that. Cowboys kind of like that could be not a great outcome for the Eagles, depending on what happens there. If Ashton Genty falls to them, if they're able to get Tech McMillan, I'm
not a Ted McMillan guy at all. You're
all
tall, so maybe you like Ted.
That's right.
You're very tall.
I'm biased.
But I just don't like guys who can't separate. Like he's going to make some great catches, but if you can't separate consistently, I hear the Mike Evans comparisons. I'm like, I see Laquan Treadwell. That's what I see. But I could be completely wrong. I would be thrilled if the Cowboys, if I were an Eagles fan, I'd be thrilled if the Cowboys took Ted McMillan. But go on, Washington. Sorry.
Yeah, then Washington, that could be a really interesting pick since they're so close to the Eagles. I think there's really potential there for like, oh, this player is still on the board. They're still on the board. And the Eagles kind of get like sniped there by Washington, assuming they don't trade up. And I think that's all the more reason maybe to trade up so you make sure you don't get sniped by Washington there. I think, yeah, that the Commanders pick could have the potential to kind of like ruin the Eagles draft night a little bit.
I could see that.
And I think they need an edge rusher too.
There.
So that could really affect the Eagles because I think
Yeah.
one of the spots they're looking at is going to be edge rusher. So
yeah, I could see it being a pissing match. Eagles go to 28, Commanders go to 26 or something like that. I could see that happening. BLG, thank you, brother. Something I learned in this segment, BLG, with you today is that not only do when I fumbled and said LG instead of BG, speaking of Brandon Graham, not only do you have the initials of BG together, but his middle name is Lee. So it's Brandon Lee Graham. And then here we have Brandon Lee Goutton. I did not know that. That's pretty cool. So BLG and BLG are a big part of the Eagles organization and team. So good stuff, BLG. We appreciate you, brother. And we'll talk to you next week, hopefully after a great NFL draft this weekend.
Real quick, I've talked to him about that to verify because you see stuff in like Wikipedia or whatever.
Yeah,
like, is that true? Yeah. And I asked him, and he's like, "Yeah." And I showed him my initials, and he was like, "Awesome." So there we go.
And there you go, good confirmation. BLG, appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to you next week.
See you.
Thanks, bud.
BLG, good stuff from BLG. Joining good draft prep today from Mike Gil and BLG. Johnny Mac, going to be interesting. I do think BLG brought up a good point about the Commanders, kind of sitting right there. It's like. There's almost a level of, do they take the guy they know the Eagles want to take just to stick a knife in their opponent who just won the Super Bowl?
I don't think that's the case, but
I think we have a lot of similar needs though. Like you just said, they might go for an edge rusher.
Well, that's the point. Like if they take an edge rusher and the Eagles take an edge rusher, you're going to get that narrative no matter what. So say they take Stewart,
right,
and the Eagles take whomever. Pierce or Scorton or whoever falls, I think you're going to get that narrative that they wanted Stewart. Maybe that's true. Maybe it isn't, but maybe it is. We'll find out eventually. But I do get the feeling
Howie's not letting the new kid on the block come in and do that to him. Howie will jump to 28 if he needs to get his guy.
Yeah, I don't know. If you saw, like I said, I think Adam Peters did a good job as a rookie GM, as opposed to a lot of rookie GMs who come in and are completely overmatched. I always pick on Ryan Poles and I pick on Kwesi a little bit. Same division. They were overmatched early, at least early. They're getting better, and everybody's got to learn. I think Adam Peters looked pretty good as a rookie GM. Brad Holmes was pretty good early.
I think
most of them are need some time to gear up. But hey, I'll take Howie over anybody when it comes to manipulating the board. But, you're at a disadvantage when you're starting below a team. That's built into it.
Yep, no doubt about it. Commanders have the upper hand right now. How will it shake out tomorrow? I'm looking forward to it, man, John. All this prep, all this talk, all this hype and hoopla, I'm ready for it to come. Let's get the super chat here on the way out the door. Rich checks in, becomes a new member. Thank you, Rich. Appreciate you, my man. And Juan Atkins checking in. What's up, my man? How you doing? He says, Philly can get Minnesota pick at parentheses 740. What does 740 mean? With 32, a third, fourth, take that to 745, knowing how we would want his change back. So Minnesota will have to throw in seventh with 24. John, that is like gibberish.
Well, I assume Minnesota's got 24. You give them 32, a third and a fourth to take 24. Blah, blah, and they get a seventh back. I assume that he was talking about Minnesota's, if there's one team, you could say 98% that's going to trade out. And Kwesi's, he's been willing to take less than he should get. And this year he just needs draft picks. He needs draft picks. He's got 4 picks. So if there's one team that's going to trade out, it's going to be them, 99%. But as I said, Giants, you might have to worry about the Giants there because the Giants are coming back to get a quarterback. They're not taking a quarterback at 3.
I was thinking about this. Bob Brown put this in the chat, and it's funny he said it because I thought about this the other day. And we've talked about Shador falling. If they end up with Travis Hunter at 3, and then Shador is available late in that round, do they double dip and try and take both of those guys?
Very possible.
I could see that. I could see that.
I just get the feeling that teams are not high on Shador, and I think that's the case. I don't know if the Giants, but I don't. It only takes one, and obviously, they play together and blah blah blah. Yeah, but I certainly think it's a possibility. I think a lot of it depends on do they want Jackson Dart, because I think Pittsburgh wants Jackson Dart. And that's 21. So if you want that player, you're going to have to go above 21. But if they're okay with Shador or even Jalen Milroe, because he's not going to play right away, then you can go up to 24 and get it done. So my point from the Eagles' perspective is they're going to have competition to go up to 24. And even though I trust Howie to fleece Kwesi, what complicates that is there's going to be other teams willing to give him more to get that 24th pick, if that makes sense. So you might have to up it to get the pick.
Yeah, Amon was talking about the value. I didn't realize, the value chart. He said 740 is the value. Pick 24, pick is value at 740. Gotcha, Amon. I didn't realize that that's what you were talking about when I was reading it. I do appreciate the super chats, my man. Hope you're doing well, and appreciate everybody for being here. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts on this last day before the NFL draft, Johnny Mac.
Well, I gave you my conspiracy thought and all the Texas A&M people coming in. Learned about one specific Texas A&M person, but I do think Walter Nolan is the number one target of the Philadelphia Eagles. The question is, he might go, as we pointed out, as high as number 9 or number 11.
Yeah,
and then it becomes, who cares?
After that, it becomes that. Immediately. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. We appreciate it. By the way, last question for you. You a lot of talk about Shamar Stewart today. Is there any new information that's come in, or is that a Johnny Mac likes Shamar Stewart?
Well, no, I wouldn't take him. I've been very clear. I would take the safe option. No, it ain't my thought. I'm projecting what the Eagles. I'm very clear the Eagles want a traits-based prospect.
Right.
And to me, 3 names fit that definition, and I said them all. Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Oladejo.
Let's see what happens. Johnny
Trade
Mac,
up,
great show.
Stay put, trade down.
All right. Johnny Mac, great show, brother. Appreciate you doing it on this Wednesday. We'll touch base tomorrow on a draft day edition of Birds 365, brother. Appreciate you doing it today. We'll catch you tomorrow, Johnny Mac.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. There's Johnny Mac. John McMullen, the #1 Eagles beat reporter in town. Give him a follow on X at JF McMullen for all of your Eagles needs. Good stuff over there. He did put up some information about the draft yesterday. It seems like John's getting some intel. That's why I asked that about Shamar Stewart. It seems like he's getting some more intel here late in the process. I got to run today. I don't have any Zander time. I have some things to do to prep for this actually for the NFL draft tomorrow. So I'm going to get out of here, but I do want to thank and appreciate, welcome all of you guys for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button. It's draft week. Yeah, it's almost draft day. Draft day. Johnny Manziel. There we go. All right, so everybody's jacked up. We're all figuring out. We're all pumped to get a new Eagle. All right. Who is it going to be? Will they make a pick tomorrow? This is my new fear. And this is, I'll admit this to you. This is the content in me. Okay. This is the business in me. I'm afraid they're not going to take a pick tomorrow. I'm afraid they're going to trade out and we're going to have a dead zone day one of the NFL draft. All right. That's my fear, is that we got a shitty ass day one because we're all live and we're watching the draft unfold and the Eagles don't do anything. I don't think so, but that's my fear. Trade back, all this hype, all the hoopla, the countdown, and they don't even take somebody. Oh, man. As a content creator, that would be the worst case scenario. But we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, I really just want the Eagles to get a good collection of players that can improve and help this team in 2025. So that's hopefully what they will do. Brian Pumper saying trade back. So maybe take it to the bank. They're going to trade up because this guy is on a historic streak of losing. So thank you, Pump. I appreciate you, brother. I love you. Flexing and Step, good to see you back in the chat, my man. Appreciate you, dog. What'd you think of WrestleMania? I know you were big in the WrestleMania. I didn't catch much of it, but I did catch a couple of the highlights. Good to see you back in here, my brother. You still got the Sills profile picture. My boy, Philly Don. Everybody's in here today. I love it. Philly Don, what's going on, my man? Hope you're doing well, bro. Hope you're doing staying safe. I know you were painting your boy's house or whatever you were doing. So hopefully you got all that done and successfully. And then one other person I wanted to comment too. My boy Jason, 18. Someone stole the bike. Come on, man. I hate that. Got to get a good lock, man. Got to get a good lock. But I saw you say you might get an electric. I like the electrics down the shore, so they're pretty fun. My boy Dirty Air's in here. Devin Shanahan's in here. Bird Gang Girl. Gray Jammers is in here. Jammers, how does it feel your team? I hope you enjoyed Adam Peters' year one because he has been on a historic losing streak like Brian Pumper since then. What a shitty offseason it's been for him. All right. Your team, I don't think got better at all. All right. You guys added Debo Samuel. Who's the dude you signed to the interior after getting rid of Jonathan Allen? Javon Kinlaw. Are you kidding me? Come on, man. You guys stink. I did like that video of Jaden Daniels running into the facility yesterday. I like that fire and that passion. I saw a funny meme. It's like he's running away from his mother. I was cracking up at that. Rich says, Z, what truck do you get? Nothing yet, Rich, but I'll tell you this. I'm going Ram because I got the pricing back, and the deals I'm getting on the Rams are absurd compared to Ford. So I'm going to go Ram, bro. I'm going new Ram. I'm going new Ram sometime soon. Kirsten giving an update on my beard. I know I'm trying, everybody. He says, hey, Z, she says, hey, Z, the beard's doing well. It's getting there. I trimmed it up for Easter. So I took it back a little bit, but I got to get rid of it soon. I don't know. I was letting it grow until my birthday, which is a couple of weeks away in May. So maybe I'll see what happens. Oh yeah, Abe, I saw that video you sent me. Jason says, Ram better anyway. Well, here's the problem, bro. I wanted so bad to go with the American manufacturer. Give me a Ford, that American car. That's what I love. I like Mustang. I like Ford. So I wanted to get a Ford. My brother just got a Ford too. So, and his F-150 is pretty badass. But F-150s, they're dime a dozen. They're everywhere. So they're I'm probably going to go new Ford. But the other thing is, the new Rams, they don't have the V8. I like the V8. I like that big V8, that Hemi. So I'm going to get rid of my Hemi for some bullshit inline six. Oh, God. That thing better drive like a dream. It is 500 horsepower, so it'll be pretty good. Yeah, I guess you're right, Philly. That's basically all of them now, man. All right, that's basically all of them now. Fords aren't American anymore. They make them in Mexico. Is that right? I thought most of the Fords were still made in America. I know. The funniest thing is like parts from everywhere, but assembled in America. I'm like, all right, so it's made everywhere else. You just put it together. All right, you tighten the hardware in a country. All right. Yeah, I was going to say, so there's still a lot made in Dearborn, Michigan, where the Ford plant is. All right. I mean, some of them probably, but yeah, it's the real question, Daz. All right. That's the real question, Daz. You stepping out. I don't think yet, Daz. I don't need it yet, bro. I don't have my own house yet. I don't have kids. You know what I mean? Like, I probably don't need it yet. So I'll probably step up to the 2,500 on my next truck. All right. My next truck. Kirsten, look at that. My B-Day is May 9th. That's how I remember when Z's B-Day is. There you go. One day before mine. Hate to break it to you, Kirsten, but 10th is much better than the 9th. All right. Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Happy early birthday to you, though, Kirsten. I'll make sure I wish you a happy birthday on May 9th. Fly Eagle says, Xander, what's the plan for tomorrow? What time do we tune in? Good question. All right. So I'm trying to figure out exactly when I'll have John and Cilio on. But the one guarantee I'll have for you is I'm probably going to stream the entire draft live. I can't show it or anything because, we're not allowed to do that. But I'll probably – that's what I have to do today. I got to get set like a TV up here so I can stream the draft live. So the guaranteed time to tune in now for the draft, and this is Friday, Saturday, all weekend, Thursday as well, is when the Eagles make a pick, we'll have instant reaction immediately. So we did that with John last year in round 2 and 3. I'll have Cilio to do some as well on Thursday and Friday, and we'll get instant reactions to the pick. And I'm trying to go live as well. So pretty good. There'll be plenty of content, man. Yeah, Drozone says Mother's Day again for my birthday this year. We birthday neighbors. I love it. When is Mother's Day this year? Fun fact. I was born on Mother's Day. Kirsten, I thought you just said your birthday was May 9th. Was I tripping? May 11th for me. Nice. 3,500 with some Forgianos. Hey, I'm not that big pimping yet, bro. All right. I ain't pimping like that yet. F-150 with a Coyote. Yeah, I would love one of those, man. But I need the crew cab. Ram is junk, he says. Yeah, I know. Everybody goes back and forth. All right. Auto tariffs are still in play. It's not a good time to buy. MRES, trust me, I'm in a good spot. All right. Believe me, I know. I follow car industry. My mom has been working in it for 30 years. So May 11th is Mother's Day this year. Nice. All right. Yeah, I'm not towing much. I mean, I tow a little bit, but nothing crazy. So I'm not going 2,500 yet. I'll go 2,500 next when I have my own house and shit. Maybe buy a boat one day. I don't know. Do I want a boat? I don't know if I want a boat. It's like one of those things. Everybody says they want a boat. I don't know if I really want a boat. I'd almost rather get a friend that has a boat, or tell my brother to buy a boat. He's talked about getting a boat. Maybe he'll do it. He says, Z, what's a player you don't want to see at 32? Dog, I don't want to see Nick Emenwar. Yo, Brian, we might be on the same page. I don't like that guy. No, I like him, but I don't think he's as good of a player as as people are making him up to be. All right. Emenwar is a good one. I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't love Shamar Stewart at all. John had Shamar Stewart in his Eagles only mock draft. Shamar Stewart, I mean, guy was so unproductive in college, but because he had good combine, is that what we're talking about? So he's maybe one that I wouldn't really love to see, but at the end of the day, Pump, I think Howie, their process is good, man. So I think they're going to make the right decision on players, but probably Shamar and Emenwar are two good ones. I like that you brought up Emenwar. Good job by you. For a tax write-off, you need at least a 2,500. Nah, Kev, that's not true, my man. That's not true. You talking about the 6,000 pounds? No. I could still write it off. I just can't write up to 50% off. That's all. But I'm doing it different. I'm doing it differently this time. I wrote off my last truck. The one thing I might do is I want to wrap it with JAKIB. I want to have JAKIB logos and my usernames and shit. I think that would be so cool to have the Birds 365 logo on there. All right. You look like a boat shoes type of fool. I don't own a pair of boat shoes, Bruce. Fuck off. Dork. Bruce Banner. Guy's a clown. So 4 for 4. This is why I love my Ram so much. The interior is light years better than the Fords. It's feels nice. Feels quality, man. Feels quality. Everything else, I got my, my dad used to drive the Denali, the Sierra Denali, which is an expensive ass truck. The Sierra Denali. It was like an $80,000 truck. Now he got a good deal on it and stuff, but dude, I got in that truck. I'm like, this thing is chintzy as hell. So chintzy. Didn't drive good at all. I'm like, get to that. My dad sold that thing quick. He hated that truck. So I do love the Ram. The interiors are great, man. The interiors are great. All right. Let me get out of here. I appreciate all you guys doing it, being here today. As always, I appreciate you. Hit the like button. Comment down below. Who do you want to see the Eagles draft? Everything. We're going to have a bunch of coverage here on JAKIB Sports. So we appreciate all of you guys as always. My boy Brandon says Stewart is a historic bum. Not yet. He can't be a historic bum yet. All right. If he falls on his face, Brandon, I'll give you credit for being the first one to call him a bum. But he can't be a bum just yet. All right. A historic bum is a hilarious description, though. All right. So good stuff. Always love all you guys. Always cracking me up. I appreciate it very much. See you next time, everybody. I appreciate you all.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.